can see a reaction from his face that he didn't like the design. So I actually, within 4 seconds, I scrapped the whole design. I said, okay, no problem, we can redesign the whole thing. And my staff member comes up to me after, it's like, I understand we spent months preparing this. I said, but he didn't like it. But how'd you know? I can tell from his facial expression, he didn't like it. So if he doesn't like it, I can pivot. And the client was happy because we were able to pivot within the conversation. I want to address something very interesting today, and that is regarding in-person meetings and understanding and how to cultivate and ultimately win the conversation embedded within a meeting. One of the things that most people don't realize when they're sitting in a meeting is that they have a language that they're speaking, but they're not actually saying. It's a very important component. Most people don't realize that their language that they're speaking, the person across from them is actually reading it. One of those examples are, and I'm going to give you some personal examples in this as we go through this episode, but you'll see that these things actually work. So for instance, I had a client that walked in like this, and he had his arms crossed throughout the conversation. And I've actually had this conversation with my partners. Now, you're looking at me with my arms crossed. What you don't realize is that what I'm telling you is that I'm not interested in listening to you because I'm interested in thinking what I have to say for myself. In fact, a pregnant woman a lot actually will cross her arms also because she's protecting what's inside. So one of the girls in the office walked in once, and she was walking around with her arms crossed. And I told my partner, I said, I believe she's pregnant. She goes, how do you know? I'm telling you she's pregnant. And then the next day he calls me up and she goes, oh, she just came in and she told me she's pregnant. So body language tells you a lot. So if someone's in a meeting and is crossing his arms across from you, right away your first mentality is, oh, he doesn't want to listen to me. He's not paying attention to what I'm saying. And chances are he's not. Or he's paying attention, he already has an argument against what you're saying. Either way is doing it. We just opened up a new company to do measuring. It's called BSP, Blue Square Pro. And the person's running the project would walk into meetings and his arms were crossed. And I gave him a whole long synopsis. You cannot walk into a meeting and cross your arms because, as you can see, it does not look great. And he came back to me 2 weeks later and he says, you know, I've actually used it in my own house with my wife and we have a better relationship because of it. And we don't realize that we give off information heavily when we're sitting with somebody, and that information that we're giving over, a person on the other side who knows how to read it could actually control the conversation depending on the language that you have, and your body language you have. And you should realize that your body has this language so you can get to control it. And the more you understand it, the more you control it. Not just that you get to control your own body language that you're speaking, but you get to read the other person's body language that they have. One of the examples, this is an extremely good example, is that when someone's thinking, they usually have a tick. You know, when I want to visualize something in 3D or understand it from an architectural perspective, I'll close my eyes and I'll render the whole project in my head. And I usually get some people like, did he fall asleep? I'll go like, yeah. I'll get comments like, did you fall asleep? And I was like, no, I'm really processing your information. Or I'm sitting with somebody, my son does this a lot, that's really funny. If you ask him a question, he'll go, yes. I'm like, okay, so I've told you, you're thinking about what we're talking about, right? You're really paying attention to it. He goes, how do you know? Everybody has a tick, and they don't even realize it. Now, this is true because they talk about this in criminology, is that if you want to tell someone's lying, and if they stop to think when you ask them a question, they have to make up a story, then chances are they're actually lying about the story. And it's very true, because at the end of the day, if he was telling the truth, you know the story, why do you have to make it up? You have to think about it. It happened. Now, if you want to think about a specific detail, okay, I hear that. You have to really think about it. But you ask the basis, did this happen this morning? Did you eat oatmeal this morning? And the guy goes, this. Chances are he either didn't eat oatmeal or he's going to make up a story about something else he did that morning. So we have tics. Every single person has them. Everybody's different. You need to pay attention to them, because the more you pay attention to them in meetings, you want to go for an interview, understand what the interviewee is actually telling you without actually speaking it. You want to know what your person on the other side of meetings telling you. You can see it and have a language and have a conversation with them. I'll give you a perfect example of this, is that I was in a meeting once and the client across from me was actually going through a process and had questions about it. And I can see a reaction from his face that he didn't like the design. So I actually, within 4 seconds, I scrapped the whole design. I said, okay, no problem, we can redesign the whole thing. And my staff member comes up to me after, was like, I understand we spent months preparing this. I said, but he didn't like it. He goes, how'd you know? So I can tell from his facial expression, he didn't like it. So if he doesn't like it, I can pivot. And the client was happy because we were able to pivot within the conversation. If we chose not to pivot, we would basically be feeding him something he doesn't like. You need to be able to read your people in your meetings because it's what makes the meeting function and what makes you win the conversation, because they believe that they never told it to you, but you understood it already. That means you understand them as a client and they appreciate you understanding them. Now, that also comes with also preconceived notions. You have to also have the circumstances, also comes down from different meetings. But you paying attention to someone in your meeting and you paying attention to having a conversation with somebody, and this doesn't just apply to work. I'm taking that caveat. Yes, within work, within meeting, if you want to go out with somebody, you want to have any type of circumstances in your own life, a person will be telling you a lot of things without them telling it to you. And the more you get the ability to read those things, the better off you are. Because imagine someone goes on a date, right? And the date starts talking to them without actually saying any words. And they have the ability to respond to it. That makes you a lot more powerful on the date because you have a conversation with them and you actually understand them before they actually say anything. They feel like you're listening, which you should be doing anyway. That's a side point. But the point is that you are actually listening and they see that you're listening because you're paying attention to what they're saying. The more you realize that, the more you have that conversation, people's tics, people's languages, body language is so crucial to understand. And I would highly recommend go into a meeting and don't be the primary person in the conversation. Stand on the side and watch. And watch and pay attention to people's language that they have, their body language. A, you'll learn more about your own body language. You'll realize how much you're actually saying without actually saying it. And B, you'll learn how people react and what they say. And that gives you the ability to actually control the conversation, win the conversation, ultimately get more clients, and at the same time, cultivate relationships with the people in front of you. Now, I wanted people to understand this because this is something that I tell people, and this also goes into public relations and to advertisement, understanding how people think, understanding how people process information. And we're going to try to do a whole series and go through all these things to explain these components of the psychological aspects of what goes into business, which is really the most important part that most people forget about. Psychology is a whole science, but if you don't pay attention to the psychology of somebody who's around you or next to you, paying attention to you, chances are you're not going to win the conversation. But if you do pay attention to it, you are the most powerful person in the room because you are having conversations when no one else is having conversations, and they don't even realize they're talking to you. And they're telling you things without them actually telling it to you. And that is the most powerful person in the room. With that, I'd like to end the conversation. However, we want to keep this going, so please like, subscribe, follow us. We'll hope to give you more content and better content.